Hi guys, welcome to another Kickin' It with Karan episode. Today I've got a very special guest, Armon, co-founder of HashiCorp. Hi Armon, welcome to this show, social distancing show, I guess. Weird times, but I thank you for taking the time, a couple of minutes to chat with us. For my audience anyway, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and what you do?
Sure, sounds good. Thanks, Karan, for having me. You beat me to it. My name's Armon Dadgar. I'm one of the founders of HashiCorp, which for folks who don't know, we're sort of in the cloud infrastructure automation space.
Cool. So, I was, when I was first exposed to HashiCorp, that was during my time at Microsoft. Where'd you come up with the name? How did the whole idea come up by? And obviously, now it's kind of the thing that people use to sort of automate everything to do with infrastructure, especially with multiple cloud providers. So kind of give me some background of, how'd you guys come up with the idea? How'd you guys meet, et cetera, et cetera?
Sure, yeah. So my co-founder's name is Mitchell Hashimoto, and so I'll come back to sort of the name. But we originally actually met at University of Washington. So, I'm local, grew up in the Seattle area. Mitchell was sort of out of state, and we ended up meeting on a research project at the University of Washington. So we became good friends, over the course of our time there. And we'd spent a bunch of time on side projects and hacking on random sort of automation and things like that. And, one of the projects we were on was this effort to build this kind of scientific computing cloud. So for folks who are familiar with, folding at home or SETI at home, is
Yep.
this idea that, yeah, you donate background cycles of your computer to these scientific causes, and we, fold protein, maybe, find a cure to COVID, things like that. So it was a super cool idea, and then the challenge was like, how do you coordinate, hundreds of thousands, millions of machines kind of linked together as part of the scientific compute cloud? So we spent a bunch of time working on that at the university, and this is 2007, so early AWS, and there was really no tooling, right? There was no tooling to do provisioning or scaling or service discovery or anything. And so we were starting building a bunch of this stuff as part of the university and kind of cutting our teeth on it. Flash forward a few years, we ended up at a startup together where we were sort of mobile advertising. Same sort of a thing now, circa 2011. Still not a lot of good cloud tooling. So as we're trying to build stuff, we're still building a bunch in-house. And so we finally asked ourselves and said, why are we and everybody we know reinventing the exact same wheel? We're all building a tool to do provisioning and service discovery and, image building, et cetera. There should just be a company that does this. And so that was kind of the motivation to start this. And the name, it's funny, when we were starting to think about names, we were so eager to get going that we just kind of started working on things. Mitchell had a old consulting company that he used to do just like contract work on when he was, in college, that was called HashiCorp. It was the HashiCorp LLC, and it was just named after his last name, Hashimoto. And so we started doing business under this thing, and we ended up raising a seed round. And at some point, we're like, wait, should we change the name? Because we've just
So
been
was there a
using
name?
this.
Was there a name before HashiCorp that you had registered, or
No,
there
we were
wasn't?
just started using Mitchell's old LLC to just like get going right away because we're like Mitchell's like, oh, I already have this company. We can just start doing things basically.
Well, that's very cool. Yeah, I mean, funny you mentioned folding a home. In fact, one of my other interviews was with Mr. Dr. Bowman, actually, because so I run the GPU infrastructure team, and we've been donating a lot of accelerated hardware for some of the COVID research, and
Oh,
so
that's awesome.
super small world, right? We were talking about it
Extremely
before.
small.
Yeah. So, I'm kind of interested to sort of dig into, what your, I guess, experience was like in terms of kind of the funding and, startup experience. Obviously, you're kind of well past beyond that startup. I guess, what was your experience being right in the center of, Sand Hill Road and everything?
It's honestly, it was a surreal experience. The first time we did it, I don't think we really knew what we were signing up for. We didn't have expectations going in. So, I remember we sort of signed up for the roadshow week, and we had like 2 weeks of meetings, basically almost back to back, all in Sand Hill Road with different investors. And I'll never forget the first meeting we went to was with a big name investor, one of the top funds. We get there, and the partner doesn't show up until 30 minutes into our hour meeting. And, comes in, first question, he sort of sits in the chair, leans back, sort of looks at me and Mitchell and is like, so are you two a thing? And we're like, what does, like a company? Is that what you're asking? He's like, yeah, like, is it a company? And we're like, yes. And he's like, oh, okay, great. Yeah, like, what do you do? And so we started explaining, our vision for cloud infrastructure and automation and things like that. He's like, oh yeah, I don't really focus on that. I'm not really I'm not really on the infrastructure side. What do you think about Bitcoin though? And I'm like, I don't know. Like it exists. I don't know what you want me to tell you. And it was just this bizarro meeting, and you can kind of guess how it went from there, right? It just sort of completely went sideways. Um, Thankfully, I think that was on the worst end of the spectrum, but I think it was, the hard part, I think, is especially when you're early, you have this vision, it's clear in your mind's eye, but it's not clear to other people. And so a lot of the investors we met, they didn't get it, right? They didn't understand the vision of HashiCorp, or they thought it was too ambitious. I think today we're very well known for having a portfolio of products, right? It's not just like one or two. We have 6, 7 products. And early on, when we pitch this, people, they're like, no, pick like one, double down, really focus on that. And we had a tool, Vagrant, at the time that had probably 500,000 users. And they're like, you guys should just cancel everything else and double down and be the Vagrant company, and even rename to be, Vagrant Inc. And it was so opposed to sort of our vision of this portfolio company that tried to solve this whole automation spectrum of problems.
Yeah, with the whole stack of deployment tools and automation, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And so that was our vision, but most of the investors didn't get it or thought it was too ambitious, and we were doomed to failure. But eventually we did end up finding a few who were sort of led by people who used to be operators, who used to come from a technical background. They really understood the vision. They found it compelling. So although it was a painful, jarring experience where most people had told you, you're either going to fail or it's too ambitious or it's a bad idea to begin with, or they don't care and would rather talk about Bitcoin. It was this broad spectrum of experiences. But at the end, as the saying goes, you only need one yes.
Fast forwarding to today, I mean, you guys are basically supported and on almost every platform, sort of the major cloud providers. Obviously, you work with us, Oracle. We kind of support all of your tools and things. And so it's kind of the de facto standard. In fact, when Oracle Cloud was kind of getting up to speed, when I joined 3-4 years ago, the idea was that we wouldn't reinvent the wheel, and why don't we use the tools that everybody's already familiar with, right? So in fact, I think in some cases, or in some case, HashiCorp was a real accelerator for us in terms of getting people up and running and really quickly. So I guess to sort of end it with kind of where do you see, I guess, HashiCorp in the next couple of years or 5-10 years, and kind of where do you see this space?
Yeah, I mean, I think you raised a couple points, which is like, over the last few years, one of our big focuses, and I think you've seen it happening, is how do we make kind of the HashiCorp tools the de facto standard in terms of how people think about cloud automation? And in many cases with things like Terraform, it's well on the way there, right? To your point, it's like it is the standard for how Oracle Cloud gets provisioned. So I think that's been a big focus across all the layers for us, of like not just provisioning, but security with Vault, networking with Console, application deployments with Nomad. So it's been a big focus for us, and I think to your point, the value of HashiCorp is very much like we are sort of Switzerland, right? Like we're not a cloud provider ourselves.
Right.
Our value is that we work across all the major public cloud providers, on-premise providers. And so I think that's kind of the role we play in the market. Is like, great, most of the customers are going to be multi-cloud. How do they do that in a seamless way? And so for me, I think the prediction when we talk about next few years is, how do we double down on that strength of, great, we know our customers are going to be multi-cloud fundamentally. How do we make their life really easy at all these different layers, and really focus on like, how do we get them successful from making sure it's a secure deployment, making sure that they get that end-to-end automation, making sure they actually leverage like, what the best of breed features of all the cloud providers. So I think that's kind of our big focus and mission area, is really, make that as simple as possible and make it sort of, push button for people.
Cool. Well, super awesome chatting with you, Armon. I think, I'm sure, especially with our backgrounds, we could keep talking, on these topics for the rest of the day. But thanks again for joining, and hopefully to see you in person someday.
Likewise. Thanks so much for making the time.
See you later.